As most people's entry point to the TTRPG space, and as the largest TTRPG by far, D&D 5e drives a lot of online discourse. Especially since the OGL, but this was true before. It's a game we all love to hate. I see a lot of discussion online around everything D&D does quote-unquote wrong, from its mechanics to its flavour, framing, and the expectations it sets for new players. All to different levels of good faith. While genuine and helpful criticism of the game does exist, I worry it is sometimes drowned out by D&D bashing because it's popular and clickable to hate on the one on top. This is where I would like to make a quick distinction. I think there is a contingent who conflate D&D as a game system with its parent company, and so criticise the system as a way of criticising Hasbro, which I feel is incredibly unhelpful, but to be clear, Hasbro will get no affection from me. In this video, I want to do the maybe unpopular thing, and explain what I admire about D&D 5e as a system, and why I think it might be its flaws that are its hidden strength. So to start, let's admit that the 5e chassis is fundamentally solid. A D20 plus modifier roll high resolution system is simple and robust, easy to teach and highly versatile. Sure, it has very high variance, but this high variance feeds into the high fantasy, high drama genre rather well. Advantage and disadvantage are similarly robust, having a significant statistical benefit and having an excellent game feel, though narrative and mechanical synergy is top-notch. The class structure, while not being unique or perfectly executed in some cases, is a generally good way of packaging up features, and on the whole has done a good job differentiating classes and giving abilities to core concepts of fantasy characters. I don't think anyone can deny that Aura Protection, Reckless Attack, Meta Magic, and Stunning Strike, to name a few, are iconic and mechanically meaningful abilities that speak to fundamentally good game design. In all, the general framework is good. Other than its market dominance, I think there is a good reason why so many other modern systems use similar or identical basic mechanics. In particular, all of the 5e variants, from Shadow Dark and Nimble to Tales of the Valiant and Level Up Advanced. Next, D&D is an easy system to homebrew. Not the easiest, but easy. For example, a few years back I was a player in a D&D game where I was a quack alchemist. Essentially, I made potions and lotions which were nothing more than placebo, to scam a quick buck. I worked with my GM to make a custom background, which let me craft placebo potions, which I could use to heal someone, so long as they failed an insight check against my deception. If they saw through my quackery, the potion would have no effect. Fun, flavourful, and mechanically interesting, while being simple. The distance between an idea and a complete feature is often next to nothing. Indeed, I think it's fair to say part of its strength as a system is how robust and inviting the fundamental framework is. It's easy to be creative within the established grammar of the system, I think. It's kind of like Minecraft, a fundamentally solid game, whose strength comes from how modular and expandable it is, how well it invites creativity, discussion, and the sharing of ideas. And I also think that if we were going to have any TTRPG be the entry point to the community, I would want that system to be good at encouraging homebrew, right? Transforming players to GMs, to homebrewers, to TTRPG explorers, to game designers. Why? Well, I think the true magic of TTRPGs is that you get to make the game. It is a game and a story entirely of you and your fellow players' creation. There is something deeply personal about a TTRPG, which I think very few other mediums come close to. And if you can easily start making the game your own, not just in terms of making characters and settings, but in terms of subsystems and features, that just makes it even more so. To be clear, I'm not saying that D&D is the only TTRPG on the market which does all of the above. I think there are probably better systems for ease of access, which also give that same motivation to create, experiment, and explore other people's creations. My girlfriend always says she first saw the power of TTRPGs from playing Reverse Beastmaster. That's all to say, in my opinion, these are qualities to be admired, and desired, in the system most people play first. So D&D having them is great. But there's another key thing which I think makes D&D a good TTRPG system. And somewhat counterintuitively, it's that D&D is obviously flawed. No, not that kind, flawed with an A. Just to name a few, ability scores and modifiers are clunky, antiquated, and confusing. Why do we need two different numbers? The skills are a strange collection, some of which come up constantly, others once in a campaign. The spell system is pretty clunky and counterintuitive, especially regarding spell slots, known spells, prepared spells, and spell level versus player level. Multiclassing only confuses us more, and it also limits class design in a number of ways. Many individual spells are crazy complicated or unbalanced, particularly at higher levels. Conditions are structured really weirdly, with lots of overlapping conditions. And what do you mean I gain the invisible condition when I hide? Action versus bonus action versus reaction is often an awkward and confusing distinction. And the initiative system is easily manipulated, often unintentionally. In general, the contrast between general play and initiative combat play is quite stark. The rules for death and dying are often quite immersion-breaking. The game becomes increasingly difficult to balance at higher levels, with highly unbalanced scaling. And some class features just miss the mark. Okay, so maybe not a few, maybe quite a lot. Because yeah, I have issues with D&D, I never said I didn't. But what strikes you about these problems in aggregate? Well, most of them are really easy to change or homebrew. I think the only exception being maybe the action economy stuff. It's hard to remove bonus actions without having to rework literally every class and feature. The rest of these flaws are mostly non-essential mechanics, systems which sit on top of the base game. They aren't load-bearing. In general, they are easy to swap out and change without implicitly breaking everything. It's also a system so generic in its fantasy that it's really easy to shift into other genres, horror, sci-fi, steampunk. Again, this is something of a flaw with the game, which motivates modification and experimentation. How many players' first foray into homebrew is coming up with a fix for the way D&D handles dying, or creating sci-fi weaponry and classes, rebalancing or creating spells, or a new feat or two? I think this is a pretty common experience. It certainly was mine. D&D's flaws are simultaneously fairly obvious and fairly flexible, almost like they are begging to be fixed or played around with. D&D's biggest strength may be its combination of modularity and brokenness. How much its strengths and weaknesses spark debate and discussion, how many gaps it leaves in its design which inspire players. I should say, these things I describe as flaws are both almost certainly not intentional, and also hard to recommend as a goal when designing a TTRPG. These issues arise from the game being absolutely massive. I mean, 3 books around 400 pages each puts D&D way above most other systems in pure volume. Part of it comes from legacy, and part of it comes from D&D trying to please such a broad audience. Indeed, many things I call flaws may be perfectly fine to someone else. So yeah, I'm certainly not saying we should be releasing flawed games, but perhaps just recognize that perfection is both unachievable and maybe even not that desirable. I also don't think this means folks should only ever play D&D. As an indie designer, I in fact really hope people play other systems, and there's a ton of fun to be had exploring other games, regardless of how much DNA they share with D&D. But as a common touchpoint, D&D is not a bad one, and if all you've ever played is D&D, that's cool too. Some people get really elitist about it, like your cred as a player or designer is dictated by how many non-D&D systems you've played. Weird behaviour, stop that. If we learned anything from the stereotype of a Pathfinder player, bashing the game people love is a terrible way to get them to play your new game. You are much better served by highlighting your favourite system's strengths, and the shared aspects which can help people feel more comfortable moving over to a new game. As we continue into this new era of rapid expansion and diversity in the TTRPG space, where games can kickstart for millions, and new indie creators are springing up left and right, let's use D&D as an encouraging example of how the true magic of TTRPGs is that the game is made at the table, with the rule system as scaffolding from which to create and customize and homebrew. Or, maybe I'm totally wrong. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm not sure if this one will be controversial or not, but just in case, let's try keep things civil in the comments, hopefully an unnecessary instruction. Anyway, thanks for watching.